the love that we feel, because it is love, is so powerful. It is in some ways very tragic when you have a daughter whose mother's passed and the connection they have with one another. And I pick up on the love of the mother and also the pain, the emotional pain from the daughter. There are no words to describe the total empathic nature there and the link to the divine, the link to the source, because it's all about love. And sometimes I really hate it when people say you feed from people's emotions. How dare they? We do not. We bring evidence through their survival beyond this realm. And I can't tell you just how important it is sometimes for them wanting to reach out to their family members from that side to this side. And also the joyous connection of the divine, the infinite source of all that we are and connect to.
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. I'm your host, Julie Cluff, and as always, I'm going to remind you to like, share, subscribe, and give us a little love. I love your comments, so it's really fun to hear your reactions to the show and the reactions to our guests. And today I have a very special guest all the way across the pond. Philip Kinsella. Hi, Philip. How are you today?
Hello, Julie. I'm okay, and thank you very much for having me on your amazing show. I'm very delighted.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank
And
you.
before we get started in our conversation, share a little bit about yourself so people know who you are and what you do.
Yes, well, I'm what they call a ufologist and also a spiritualist medium. I'm also an author of numerous books. I've just released my new one called Hijacked, which is about the human soul. And I'm also a clairvoyant medium, as I said. So I've spent many long years working on the principles of discarnate communication and trying to work out more about what we are and where we're from and the other side.
Beautiful. I love that. Right in line with what we love to talk about here. So take us back, Philip, and share a little bit about growing up. Or was your family religious? Did you grow up in a spiritual home or a religious home? What was your experience like?
Well, I always knew that when I was a kid, I was a freak because I would see things happening in my mind. And then when I forgot about them, they would then happen. And I thought that I was generating this from my mind. So I used to say a mantra, and it was no, God, no, never, God, never. And then it would seem to cancel out what I was seeing. And it was my late maternal grandmother who was instrumental as a kid growing up because she was also psychic. And I never wanted to be a medium in my life. I was more interested in UFO research. But when I have an identical twin brother, Ronald, when we were 13, we were with our maternal grandmother and staying in, they had a big house in Felton, Middlesex. And in broad daylight, we saw what we would call a UFO, but it was the size of a football and it was silver. And I suppose the common name for them was the Foo Fighters, but it came over to the garden in broad daylight under control. Remember, this is back in the 80s. They had no sort of technology like that, and the object literally hung above our grandmother's head and in line with the second floor windows because their house was 3 stories high. And we said, "Oh, Grandma, what is that?" And she said, "Oh, she said the fairies have come to take a closer look at us." And we knew that she was covering something far more fantastic. And it was a talk of the family for some time, and then it went. So it was my grandmother who was instrumental. When I then came of age, my grandmother passed the same year and same month when Princess Diana had died. And I went to go and see a medium, and the medium brought her through for me and said that I was psychic and that I would be back in 2 years and I would be doing this. Well, I kind of like was shocked by what she brought through for me. She brought a lot of information through, evidential information, and she was right. 2 years later, three other people had died, and one of them was a friend with cancer. And I actually did an experiment and spoke to my friend who was dying. He was 20, and when he passed over, but before he passed, I asked him if he would appear to me after his death. Tall order, it's not often you ask someone who's terminal to do this, but I was desperate because I had a manuscript I was working on, a redundant one then, in 1999 called The Eternal Cosmic Corridor. And he did just that. He appeared to me in 1999. So this then led me on the quest to working out how to do mediumship, how the others communicate on the other side. And I also saw the other side because there was an experience I had in South Africa where I suppose people would call it an NDE or a passed over. So yeah, it's kind of like, a little bit all over the place, but I've structured these out within my works.
Yeah. Fascinating. And you mentioned at 13 having
Yes.
this experience. You mentioned UFOs early on, like, that was kind of that was where your, interests lie, and was that did that interest come before the age of 13 when you had this experience in your grandma's garden, or did it come after that? Or
Yes,
both?
we've been. Yeah, I think the UFO topic had been there since I was a child, and then the psychic part then fired up a little bit later in my life. And I've been asked, well, did the experience you had with the UFOs bring this about? Well, I couldn't answer that question. But I think the medium that I saw, her name was Pearl, and that's her real name. She came from a family of psychics. She was very good. She said to me, she said, "You're going to bridge the gap between the psychic and UFO phenomena." She said that to me at the time when I saw her and when she brought through my maternal grandmother. And that was in 1997, because 1999 I went back there, and of course that's when everything all happened. So it's
Right.
interesting that I think that there are correlations that we can make where certain subject matters have been pigeonholed or catalogued into this category and that category. But what we're finding, especially through research, there seems to be connections with interdimensional realities. So when we think of the dead as like in this box here, actually, well, the other stuff like Sasquatch or even the Dogman, going down that little bit of a dark route, and UFOs may be coming on different levels of reality. So I think our understanding of the other side is very antiquated.
Yeah, I agree. I really
The principles of which are really fascinating when we start to look into the other side. And this then led primarily not just seeing my friend who had passed with cancer or my grandmother communicating with me the actual night that she died, because she was in a Somerset hospital dying of cancer. And we were here in Bedford. And I woke up in the early hours of the morning crying. And then her voice came in my head the first time ever. And she reprimanded me by saying, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" She never, ever did that. And I thought, "Oh my God, she's talking to me." And then she showed me a scene in my head of her holding me and my twin brother as babies in her arms. And this was a photograph that we have in a photo album. And then 10 minutes later, no joke, the phone rang, she'd passed over. And that's what prompted me to go and see the medium Pearl in Bedford
mhm.
in 1997, see Pearl. And that's when Pearl brought her through and said, "I'll be back in 2 years' time." And of course, there were 3 other deaths within that period. And I went back. So the UFO part and the psychic part have always seemed to be married somewhat within my warped mind. And I do have a sense of humor, Julie. I'm normal, but it's like I'm not one of these people that floats off in fairyland. I'm very grounded and practical. But my goodness me, and I will say to your viewers out there is another side, and it is more real than here. Absolutely and totally, completely.
Yeah, for sure. So interesting, and really when we dive into the other world, I mean, in our human form, I feel like we are somewhat limited. I mean, that's the reality that we stepped into. Like, we're somewhat limited in our ability to see everything, to experience everything. And so we get these snapshots, and people like you kind of bridge these different gaps. And if we keep our mind open, we can start to paint a bigger picture and see things from a broader perspective, and it's all about multidimensional
Oh,
reality.
yes. Oh, yes. I'll explain to you here now. And I've spoken to another UFO researcher, Steve Aspin, author of Out of Time. I have many, like you, have many associates and friends, and I would say experts, because none of us are experts, but we're theoretical within our content. I was driving back from his and his wife's house after a meal, And as I was in the car with my twin brother going down these, in the dark, down these country lanes, I suddenly, this was two years ago, and then a year ago, the same thing happened, but in obviously not driving back from Steve's house. I saw myself in the car, and then I was immediately on the other side. Now, let me just explain this because this is really quite phenomenal. What I saw was myself in two places at the same time. And when I was driving down these country roads, I could see myself on the other side. Let me tell you, Julie, it was a shock because I knew myself. I saw myself and I knew it from the deeper part of my soul. It was like like a complete opening, as though there was no amnesia, there was no cloaking with memory. It was all there, and I was so happy. I felt alive. I understood immortality, and it was all familiar to me. Like it was like every single worry had just dissipated. But then as I'm there and here at the same time in my car, I'm like, how can I be in two places at the same time? So when I came back, although I was always in the car from that experience, my brother said, "You okay?" And I said, "No, I need to pull the car over." And it was so shocking and so impactful. So I'm wondering whether or not, through the shock that I had when we lived in South Africa, where I nearly drowned and had an experience then, people would call it an NDE, whether or not people like yourself and myself and many other people, there is some kind of gateway or opening where these bleed throughs, I call them psychic bleed throughs, come through. And what was interesting was that I was speaking to when I'd finished doing some readings, because I read every night. I just finished my 3 for tonight. Um, a shamanic healer said, "Oh, what you've experienced," because I talk to people, I want their opinions. And I said, "What is this?" And she said, "This is a parallel life. You'll never be able to get to it." And I thought, no, 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 that I don't believe that, because what I saw was the truest version of myself. But then when I was here, I'm like, well, I'm here, but I'm there. So what is this about? So this opened up a lot of questions for me. And I'm working on a brand new book now about this. But the same experience happened to me a year ago. So that was 2 years ago, a year ago, and exactly the same opening. It was incredible. Now, I will say to you, to summarize this for you, Julie, is that where we are here, when you said, and it's very important because you're definitely on the same page as we are limited because we can only make one decision that creates one choice that becomes one action in this life. There's a lot of hopes, wishes, dreams, desires that we have that we wish, we hope to connect with on the deepest part of our soul. And that's quite frustrating in this human experience. But over on the other side, what I also knew was that every field of potentiality is accessible. It is all there. Every single part of what you represent as a spiritual being in a temporary human vessel is all there. But I'm like, okay, so we must have been drunk, okay, to pull out a ticket and say, let's go down to earth. Let's have mind wipe. Let's go to the counterfeit world because this is not the real world. And that is one of the things that truly stood out from the empirical conscious bleed through that told me that this is where we are now is not the real world. That is the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, I often compare it to, putting on a VR set, a virtual reality headset, or going through a fun house. And when you're in the fun house and there's all the distortion of the views and the floor is rocking, it feels very like you're very immersed in that. You're very or you have a VR headset on, you're very immersed in that. That's what you see, that's what you feel, that's what you experience. But then you walk out of there and you're like, "Well, that's not my reality. This is my reality." Well, similarly, we walk out of this life and go, "Oh, that wasn't my reality. My spirit experience is my reality." And I often have that question, and I'm curious about your perspective on this, is I often have that question, like, "Why are we here?" It's like you said, we must have been drunk, like, with the experience that I've had throughout my life, like, halfway through my life, I would say to my friends, "I think I stood in the wrong line in heaven." That's the way I would phrase it. I'm like, "I don't know why I had this inner knowing that I had signed up. I had signed up for these crazy challenging experiences that I'd had, and yet it didn't make any sense from this perspective. So from your perspective, why do you think that we're here? Like, what are we trying to prove, Philip?
Well, that's the $1 million question. And unfortunately, whatever theory that you have, you're going to upset someone along the line because
Exactly.
they have it all worked out. Now, there are several areas that we can take with regards to this. One that we are coming down here with Mind Wipe because we are generating experiences rather like a film and building upon the bigger tapestry of creation on the other side. That's one idea that could be possible, but it's a tough journey, right? The other one is that the false god theory with regards to Gnostic cosmology, where the original version of creation, the one had created aeons, and then a goddess fell called Sophia that then created the archons, and they trapped the souls in this matrix of theirs. And they
Mhm.
survived by the loosh. Now that's another area. There's also brings into the equation the false light theory. When I saw the side there was no tunnel or light, which was interesting. So I believe that we are helped. I really believe that there are higher dimensions of reality, most definitely, that there are beings that come in to help us. So I don't think we're completely stranded. It is a very good question because I'm still trying myself to work out why, because we all have our hopes and our dreams. We all have our aspirations. And this life, it seems real hard because a lot of people are very materialistic, and a lot of people are, and I'm going to say this, are not nice people, and other people hold other people down. But there's a lot of good people out there, and I think and feel that when we pass over to the other side, there is this kind of like feeling. What I saw was like that is reality. So I believe that we're coming down here for an experience, but it's a really harsh experience. We go through the most worst emotions, the worst losses possible, and this changes us. In fact, with some people, it sends them over the edge, and that's really sad. So I think it's kind of like a really harsh plane. The Earth plane is very, very harsh and a difficult plane to go through. But I will put this idea into your head. So I don't know whether or not there was some kind of spiritual war in the past and we got all tied up in it because we're trying to wake up and wake everyone else up and say, we need to get out of here because someone's locked us in and we need to get out.
It's like we're shaking
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
jail gate.
Yeah, I mean, there are, as I said, there are other dimensions of reality because I have seen them close up. They are obviously operating on these different levels of reality. Whereas before, just taking an example with ufology, people used to believe that they were structured physical craft coming from another planet, and it's amazing how the phenomena has transformed over the decades. And now we're looking at the interdimensional hypothesis, and this also opens up a larger construct of the afterlife because the media machine would poo-poo it or it's all right to believe in faith because faith has no scientific conviction. So my idea about us being here is mixed. I think we shouldn't be going through a lot of this. I think that we are probably evolving, or we want to get back to source because it feels like we've got something missing. But at the same token, this earth, this world doesn't give us much opportunity because it's controlled by a system which is intent in getting everything from you and giving hardly anything in return. So I think something's gone wrong. Go back in the past, and I think whatever power or control this is, as my new book that's just come out is called Hijacked, and people will disagree, and I'm not saying that that is what I'm saying here. I'm saying that it is a possibility. We have to look at all aspects of this. But I'll just say to you that when I saw the other side, I didn't feel anyone nabbing me or pulling me back. I just saw the other side, which I believe to be the other side, and it was more than I'd ever known here. And it was like remembering, like waking up from a dream, like, wow, this is amazing. So I believe it's possible that what we're doing here is that we're contributing to a larger story and building upon creation because it's like producers creating a film. When they create the film, they have the actors, they have all the dialogue, the narration, the storyboards, everything. and they're all working out. And then afterwards, you've got the film, and there it is. So it could be a little bit like that. But I do think this airplane is very, very harsh. And I think, as I've heard, one of the harshest planes a soul could ever come to.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. And I often have this feeling when I'm working on a project or I'm working on developing something, whether in my business or elsewhere, I often have this feeling that it already exists, that I'm just stepping into it. But also there's this one of the things that I struggle with time and space, because time and space is very different on the other side, and we're living within this linear time and space. One of the things I somewhat struggle with is this idea of we're creating here, and also there's a little bit of a, I wanna say, almost a, like, when we have an experience and it's a memory, we can look back and we can remember it, even though our experience with that event changes over time. But when we look to the future, it feels somewhat similar
Mm.
in that it's almost like we are casting that visual into the future and then working our way into moving into it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I've always just kind of questioned, am I moving into something that already exists? Am I projecting something into the future that I'm stepping into? Or some people are just like, we're just here and we're just doing stuff and things happen.
No,
There's no rhyme or reason.
yeah, you have to look at both sides, but I will say to you something interesting that I did feel also, and I get quite a lot. And I have to go back to the field of potentiality. So whether or not we construct a blueprint of our life on the other side is interesting. Are we doing it now as we're walking this path and we're sending all those thoughts out that somehow split off, and those varied, perhaps millions of versions of us slingshot round in what we call the future through what we call time here on the earth, and then connect, that creates deja vu? We don't know. But one of the things I will say to you that's important, I feel, is that when you go back in memory, and it's not because we're coloring a memory, when you go back within your mind, there are certain events that you will be drawn to. And when you go back to those events, and again, it's not because of coloring, there's something more connected to that memory, as though it's opening up a field of something more than you can express or explain. You see it, and you don't understand why you're seeing things slightly differently, but you know it. Julie, does that make sense before I carry on with this?
Yes, absolutely. Mhm.
So,
Yes.
so these parts, I believe, are markers. It's possible that they're markers, and that they're filled to potentiality. So again, we have very little, hope in terms of going forward with one timeline, and we've only got this amount of time here to do it. But there seems to be other aspects of our souls that perhaps are held in time, that are within those fields of potentiality. And I believe that when those fields of potentiality are reached on the other side, that and more is all waiting for you. So I think, although we're walking one path and make one decision and then create one action, and that it's blah, 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 like sometimes it can be really hard and boring, there are many other versions that will be available to you, that while you're here in the physical, those other versions are somehow a reality that you can explore when you pass over to the other
Mm.
side. Because when I was there, when I had that experience, it is important for me to acknowledge to all of you that we have hope. There is hope, most definitely. But the world over there is filled with complete, total potentiality that is instantly accessible. We cannot have this in this human experience, because sometimes we get things wrong. Sometimes we make the wrong decision, but everything is inside. So everything is inside you. So it is a very frustrating journey. But I'll give you an example. I remembered one scene I had. And I was visiting my stepfather at the time with my twin brother. and we were in his flat, and he had this very nice flat. It was only about 4 stories high, and around the flat at night, it was all like, it's all green and trees and everything. And at night, I was looking out the windows at the lights in the distance. And let me tell you something here, Julie. This is really very bizarre. So I'm looking out at the lights in the distance, and yes, of all things, there was G. Michelle Jarre's Oxygen playing on a record player. This is when I was a kid. And it kind of like, I don't know what that was, but that what I was seeing there, what I was feeling was was also part of what I saw on the other side. So
Mhm.
what I was picking up for, what I'm seeing, and seeing more than what I'm seeing here in terms of the lights here in the record, I'm getting it more on an emotional level, like this is opening up within my mind, and that's there on the other side, like real. So whereas like we're setting it out here and we can't touch it, we can't hold it, it is there on the other side. So it do you see where I'm coming from? It's like, we're probably sending out these feelings, these emotions that create the reality that can only be accessed on the other side, but we're doing it here. So it's possible that we're actually constructing more of our existence on the other side while we're here, rather like an actor going on and learning their lines and going through their parts. And then afterwards, it's made into the film, ladies and gentlemen. Come and buy your tickets and come see the film because it's all perfect and it's all there for you. So it's a theory, but it is to do with emotions, because when you're dealing with clairvoyance, when you're dealing with any form of psychic connection, I don't care if it's a healer or whatever, you are using another form of emotion, of language that doesn't have words, and it's rich within emotions, because in this world, a lot of people unfortunately cut off from their emotions because of the cold world we live in. But everything on the other side is all to do with emotions, and emotions are the language. So you're not here randomly. You are here to construct, to build your future, not just here, but there is no future on the other side because it's all one time. But your future here is important to what you are molding and creating for them on the other side. So again, just very briefly, because I do like to talk. Just very briefly that, you know, what we're building here, we may not see all of it, but when we pass over, it's like, oh my Lord, there it is. Because we're met with such time constraints and restrictions and a lot of other things that don't do us very well as a human in physical form. But over there, it's like, oh my Lord, there it all is. Love. Love is the most amazing part of that experience. That is what opens up all these different realities. So it's hard to try and find the words when I've had the experiences, try to bring them into some kind of context, trying to some structure. But I understand from a deeper level what I'm trying to say is that
Mhm.
you, me, all of us are all important keys the unfolding of reality. And it's possible that we are creating more realities while we're here and through forgetting and then awakening to remember.
An interesting concept came to mind as you were talking about that, and you mentioned putting together a film, and so and what they brought my attention to is this idea of, like, I'm over here working on this tiniest piece of a film, and I don't even understand the whole project. I'm just over here working on, sound production with one tone. And and everybody is doing their different parts. Some people are working on the visuals, some people are working on the tone, some people are working on the color, some people are working on costumes, whatever it is, just to use that metaphor. And then we get to the other side and we see the grand picture, and we go, "Oh, that's what that's what I was doing. I was over here in this little corner doing my piece." I want to talk about your psychic mediumship work. And
Yes.
as you work in that field, are you doing are you mostly, attuned to or working with mediumship and bringing, loved ones forward for people? Are you mostly working in the psychic field? What does that work like for you at this time?
No, I was and have always worked with those who have crossed over. So the main emphasis of my work was evidential mediumship.
Mm,
So dealing with loved ones. When I do the readings, I just ask for yes or no to confirm or deny. I always say to people, it's my job to read for you, not you for me, and bring the evidence through that way and explain the process. It's rather like a mobile phone. You've got the signal that you can't see, and that's a signal from spirit coming in, and I have to translate the information to a language that we can understand because I no longer have the larynx. And I don't normally deal with names unless I get one. But I'm more interested in the people that have crossed over and how they crossed over in their relationship to family, and then going to the family about their children and the other side of the family. So that's how I've always worked. I have dealt also with a few murder cases I can't talk about, and also a few missing people cases, which I was very honored to have worked on privately, and I can't talk about them. But it is kind of scary because you're like, you're using a different tool, which is the mind. And the system that we serve has tried to program the public into the belief that you're just a biological automaton. You are here and you live, you pay your taxes, you ask the questions, and you die. And it's okay to believe in religion because religion is faith restricted, and there's no way that we can bring any evidence or physical evidence or proof of what they're talking about, but it's fine to have it. And I'm like, hang on just a minute. Have I lost the plot here? This all seems completely, totally backwards to me.
right.
I mean, and when you start digging and people say, "Oh, it's because you're a tin hat wearing person, you're a conspiracy theorist." No, I'm a conspiracy realist. Let's just take a moment to catch up breath and take a step down and look at this. And it's like within religious ideologies, when I was looking into the research, they used to burn witches, they used to, drown them. And they were just using another part of their mind that even Christ had used. Yet it's okay for the religious people to believe that, oh yes, Christ had these powers, and I'm absolutely sure he did, but we can't see a repeat of that happening now because you'll be condemned. The whole system is so contradictory in nature. And I think a lot of people now, like yourself, many other people, are looking for their truths and peeling away the distortions, the lies, and all of the other corruption that's swamped this planet because people are now beginning to wake up. And I think a lot of people are, whether or not they're mediums or they're healers, or heck, it doesn't matter if it's sound therapy, it is linked with the psychic component. But people now waking up and saying, "Hang on, just a minute, this isn't this isn't happening anymore. We need to change this." And the system that we serve is like, "No, no, no, we'll crush you even more." So this is why going back to the example that there must be some kind of a counterforce which is trying to cancel this out. And all we want to do is remember our sovereignty, remember what we are, where we're from. And I think that there's always been a psychic war, a spiritual war in the background, and I believe that because I believe that we could be an overall threat to the establishment itself that has tried to keep everything contained. And so a lot of people, unfortunately, have gone through life with the knowledge that they are just a biological automaton, but they just have to work. They have to put food on the table. And then, of course, they pay their tax. If they don't ask any questions and they die. Instead of the system saying, oh, what can we get from you? What can you do to help us to bring about goodness to our world, to bring wonderment to our world, to bring new inventions to our world, to help people, get rid of money. Let's find another way of supplementing ourselves on different levels. But no, they won't have it. So I believe it's wonderful that a lot of souls are now coming in, and there is a war, and it's a war for truth and for love and for awakening. And people say, no, no, no. I'm like, yes, it is. So it's kind of like where we are at the moment. It has just feel very frustrating. I talk to a lot of people about this. How do you feel and how do they feel? They feel frustrated. They feel locked. They feel trapped. And I'm like, but you know what? When you've been touched by the singularity, it's like you've got nothing to worry about. And although, unfortunately, we have to wait for that moment called death, physical death, I always say you don't have to die to see the other side. I mean, literally, these realities can come in and interconnect and interact with you, which I call bleed throughs, or when you're more elevated or more aware or more heightened. It's there. And the system's like, no, we don't want you doing that. We're like, we're going to do this.
Very interesting. What has been the most maybe the most surprising thing that you've learned as you have connected with loved ones on the other side and brought people through?
One of the most surprising elements is that they can actually physically manifest as well. There are two parts to that question. One of them was my friend who passed with cancer in 1999. And before he passed, he read a redundant manuscript of mine called The Eternal Cosmic Corridor. It was then eventually taken by a publisher. I think it was 2007, a Capital Man Publishing Limited. It's called Reaching for the Divine. It's out of print now. But anyway, so he read it, and before he passed, I asked him, "Would you be able to show me yourself after you pass?" And I was really worried because I thought, "Oh my God." He said, "No." He said, "I'll do that, but how would you expect me to do that?" And I said, "I don't know. You'll find a way." And he said, "I'll tell you what. I like Star Trek. I'll beam down like they do on Star Trek." So he passed in 1999. I walked into a second-hand bookshop that's up Mill Street in Bedford here, and Mr. Wildman, the author of Books on Bedfordshire, he's passed now. He was a very kind man. I'd always go to the Mind, Body, and Spirit section, the occult section, and a book fell on the floor. It's called Reunions by Dr. Raymond Moody. It's about how to communicate with the dead using mirrors. So I took the book and I read it, and I did the experiment. Nothing happened. In the winter of 1999, I came back from work, sat in the kitchen, and I'm in the conservatory, and back here are these blinds were here, and I'm sitting looking at the glass inward, and there's an outward window, big window, and I thought, well, that looks like, black glass. And all of a sudden, outside here, I saw a young chap walking back here. Now our back garden is all fully gated and locked. There's a side garage door. The garage is locked. And I got up and he turned to face me, and it was Gareth. And his name is Gareth. And he turned to face me, and he was wearing his cat white t-shirt and blue jeans. And he looked kind of like when he just started to become ill, but he put his hand up like as if to say, "What's the problem?" And then there were all these lights and he'd gone. At that point, I was so stunned. There was no communication. I was so stunned. It was like someone had slapped me across the face because I'm a hardened person. I'd ashamedly say that I wanted proof, I wanted evidence. So I went back to the medium, and that's when I started learning and developing. The other thing that really shocked me was the other side itself, because people have this idea that you're floating around. And I will just say to you that it is not like that. It is, and people say they have, buildings there. Yes, they do. People work. Yes, they do. Do they work for money? Heck, I couldn't tell you. I don't think so. But when I was there and I saw myself, oh my Lord, it's more than just seeing it. It's all clean. It's not just being there like we are going through 1 minute with each day, which the hour, and then of course, the days, the weeks, the months. Over there, everything is there. It is total. It is complete, and the feeling of excitement of like, well, I'm really happy here. It's like I've got. There's nothing. Oh, goodness me. I even find sometimes if I can't find the words because people have had these experiences, find it hard to put into words what they're trying to describe
Mhm.
because there's all emotions and feelings that are just so incredibly powerful. And you know this. So going back, and it's very important, which I will be addressing in this new book. I haven't got a title for it yet, but I will make one up, this new one where your world here and what you think, how you feel from the heart. I'm not talking about the bad days and we're crying or we get upset, we yell because someone's trying to get into our boot and through to our bonnet in the car. But everything that you're creating is so important to your evolution, your connection on the other side. So this is how I see it. It's not just, oh, we're coming here and we're doing this. There are parts that we're not fully aware of that we're doing that will contribute to our journey on the other side. So it's a little bit long-winded.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. As you're reading for people, um, uh, would you share just a couple of examples of some readings that you've
Yes.
done where you were surprised at the evidence that came through, or the person was surprised at the evidence that came through? It's also very fascinating to me, and I do this work, and it's this just came to mind. It's like, I played tennis. I'm just a neighborhood tennis player. I'm not I was never I was never, a a professional in any sense of the word, but having played and then watching the game, and watching a professional, I have a different experience with it than I do, like, my husband played American football. And he played American football in college, and I love to watch a good football game, but I know I'm not having the same experience he's having
Yeah.
because he's actually been in the Dallas Cowboys stadium playing the game before,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So, that's a very different experience than me just watching the game and understanding it from the outside, and I think there's a lot of misperceptions about mediumship, and I'll have people come to me, and it's almost like they kinda think that I have all knowledge,
You
and it
don't.
doesn't work that way at all, so I would love for you to share
Yeah.
your perspective on this.
There's a funny one and there was a horrifying one. So the funny one was when I started doing my readings, and a young lady came round, and I have illustrated these have been documented in some of my books. But she sat down. She was lovely, and I spoke about her family and her children and her mother being here and all the rest of it. But then I saw her father. I said, "Oh, I've got your father coming through." And she said, "Oh, yes." She said, "Yes." And I could see this golden Labrador sitting next to her father, and she said, "Oh, that's whatever his name was, and that's his dog." And and suddenly I physically put my hands to my eyes and I said, "I can't see. Why can't I see? I can't see anything." She reached over to me and she said, "Lovey, he was blind."
Oh, wow.
So at that point, it was that point where I understood that the other side, it's not just about delivering the message that you're getting here, but it's also how you're feeling your actions. That was the fairly early start of it. But another one that truly shocked me was a young lad had come to see me. And I know that author, my good friend, an artist, Neil Ward, had written this in one of his books, and it's one of my books as well too. But the young lad was sitting with me, and I could suddenly see this small boat, and it had these young lads on it, and they were messing around on this boat, and they were chucking, I don't know what this was they were chucking. I said to him, and he said, yeah, they're chucking meat into the water. And all of a sudden, as I looked down at my leg, I saw a great white shark coming out of the water, rolling its eyes back and its teeth open to my leg. And I literally pulled back and I looked at the lad and I said, "I don't know if you'll understand this." I said, "I really have got no idea, but was there a young guy who was killed by a great white shark?" And the color drained from his face and he understood it. Well, what happened was that the men had been drinking, they'd been on a boat. This was in Australia because he was from Australia. He was here with family and they'd been messing around on this boat. They were chucking in meat, and one of them jumped in, like they're trying to entice a shark. And then when he was coming, they told him to get back in the boat, and they pulled him up. Well, he was yanked down, and then of course then they held on to him, and then they lifted him out. So the shark had taken his leg off, and he died as a result of the injury to the leg. So they pulled
Wow.
him into the boat. So the shark wasn't seen, but the bites were registered of being that of a great white shark. So that was another experience that I had. The other one I will say was a murder. And when I have dealt with murder, I never see the killer's face. But there was another lady that came to see me, and it was her sister that came through. And I could feel or sense two young children upstairs. And then what happened was that there was a row, and then I found myself on the floor. Someone had their hands around my neck, and I couldn't see the person. I knew it was Mel that was pinning me down. And unfortunately, the lady's sister had been murdered by her husband because he thought that she was having an affair, and that's how that came through. So don't be mistaken. I mean, a lot of the time the clarity is quite interesting. We don't always see things clearly, and it's attuning more the sensory connection. So when people say clairvoyance, clear seeing, whoever created that, well, I think they need to re-examine that because it's not always clear. But what I do is I focus upon the visual and the sensory connection. And sometimes we have problems. Sometimes we mistranslate, we get something around the wrong way, or we're not, but I'm not willing to fit it where they want it to go. But what's really interesting is that the process, we're always learning from it. But as you said, you're absolutely correct. I deal with the raw energy, and I will only deal with those that have crossed over. And even sometimes when you're getting something, you're thinking, "Oh my Lord, I don't think they're going to understand this." Sometimes they do, and there's those bits where you keep it to yourself, and then they tell you afterwards, like, "I should have said that." So
Mm, well, yes.
so we're learning, we're developing all the time, and but it's not always clear. It is not always clear. It's more of a tuning of your emotional sensory connection and how you're feeling that creates that imagery. It's like they always say that when you're developing, how you're feeling is just as important as about what you're seeing. And the feeling creates the emotions create imagery. So it sometimes can be a little bit difficult to explain that to some people. But, when they come round, I just say to them, I just say yes or no, just need yes or no, explain like signal to a mobile phone how they work. They don't talk, so they don't have the larynx. They no longer have that organ. And I don't normally deal with names because John, Mary, Sue, Pete, Elizabeth, Dave, so you could throw it out there. But it is interesting what comes through and how they bring it through. But I am sometimes frustrated because, I would like to know more about the person who's communicating their evidence of how they passed and their connection with the family, like more about them. But sometimes that's a hard point. And people say, I can do that. Well, good for you, but I'm very grounded. And I'm still developing, still learning. I'm no expert at all. And each and every one of us is just as important. I really hate it when people say, well, wonderful medium here. Well, we're all wonderful. If you're using your mind and you're trying it, then you're an instrument to the divine, no matter how good you're doing it. But we all know those people within life that want the holy grail of everything. But the paranormal, as I call it, we are all part of that phenomena. No one is exempt from it.
Yeah. I picked up on a phrase that you just used, "instruments of the divine."
Yes.
And, I would love for you to share a little more about that because, often people think that as a medium, that we're working for the person here, but in many ways, we're working for the other side and helping them communicate with their loved ones. So I would love for you to speak a little more about that.
Yes, the love that we feel, because it is love, is so powerful. It is in some ways very tragic when you have a daughter whose mother's passed and the connection they had with one another. And I pick up on the love of the mother and also the pain, the emotional pain from the daughter. There are no words to describe the total empathic nature there and the link to the divine, the link to the source, because it's all about love. And sometimes I really hate it when people say you feed from people's emotions. How dare they? We do not. We bring evidence through their survival beyond this realm. And I can't tell you just how important it is sometimes of them wanting to reach out to their family members from that side to this side. And also the joyous connection of the divine, the infinite source of all that we are and connect to. It doesn't matter if it's male or female, it is energy. We're all part of that. And I wonder sometimes, to know yourself here is to know yourself there. And the true part of creation is linked with us. So when we pass over, I've heard this said that people are wanting to see God, they want to see God. And they're like, yeah, I want to go and meet the big guy, I want to go and meet him. And then they meet themselves.
Yeah.
And that perhaps it's possible that we are all a reflection of the same energy that's going through varied experiences, and that the Godhead has created as us, we've created ourselves as through the Godhead to go through every single scenario possible. So if the one has always been and ever will be, and it wants to express itself or herself in whichever capacity, what better way to fracture the diamond, to do billions upon billions of pieces, and to let these smaller parts of fragments play out in their own dramas of trying to discover more about ourselves. And really, we know ourselves because we're part of the divine, but it's a great journey, right? I don't agree with the pain or the heartache. I don't agree with that. I think that's a bit harsh. But I think I understand about the creation process where you can look into the eyes of someone and you feel love. You feel that love, you feel that connection, how beautiful these people are, how different these people are, and how you feel drawn to them. It's amazing. And then you find out that we're all part of that. Every single one of us are never separate. Everything is within. The God is within you. This is why a lot of the religious departments want people to reach out, and when everything is within, it's all in you. You have the universe within you. So I believe that we are all connected to Source, and those on the other side, it just fills them with so much love and divinity to know that they can reach out to connect with their loved ones, because it doesn't stop here. It carries on the other side into what we call the astral planes, or the higher dimensions of reality. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So, this is what we call eternity. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, I can feel your enthusiasm for it. What are some of the I guess, themes, I would say? I mean, obviously, when a loved one comes through, sometimes that love that they bring to the reading, the person that's deceased, when we're connecting with them, they bring through so much love, it can be pretty overwhelming. But
Yeah.
there's other patterns or themes of things that they often communicate. What are some of those themes that you've noticed?
A lot of the times they bring through how they passed over. I think something that worried them in terms of illness, or if they had been unwell, suicides, they all return back to the other side. Unless they're really bad, then they'll just gravitate to an area where they can get out of it, but like minds are connected with like minds. But I'm drawn more to the love, and that has affected me sometimes where I've had to stop, and not for dramatics, but to tell them I just need a moment, because I'm feeling the love and I'm feeling the
Mhm.
emotional pain. And that is so sacrosanct. That is so, if I use the word godly, because you are getting in touch with the most sacred part of what love really means. So either pain or joy, that is where it's to be found. And I find that a lot of the times. A lot of times people that's passed over like to tell me where it was. And they're like, and one lady had to ask me to stop because it was to do with her father's heart and what they had to do with the heart. And I totally respected that. But I did say to her, I'm an evidence-based medium. It's like mothers that lose children. I mean, the pain that they go through. Well, one of the things I found, which is quite interesting, is that the children grow, so that they develop, they evolve. And I understand this, I think, theoretically speaking, that the soul, the spirit, when it comes into the embryonic development stages, or even if the child was born or passed early or born, it has a blueprint of that body. So it will utilize that and then evolve the energy of that, which is energy is transmutable. It can alter, it can change. So it's interesting to see from when children pass that they grow, because a lot of times I'd have mothers and their son is with them and the mother is 60, but the son is 30. And it's like, well, they lost the child when the child was a baby, or they lost the child when the child was stillborn, but there is your son. And this is the remarkable thing, that the son from the other side knows mum, but the mum, if she saw him in this life, she would recognize him. But when we
Mhm.
pass over, you will recognize them, because, as I said, there's that veil that's lifted from the limited processing of our conscious awareness here. Is then it's like, whoa, it's like it's opened. It's like the memory comes back. All of the memories come back. So I think in the readings that I do, the evidence is the important part. But I feel that the love that I get, sometimes anger, sometimes I've dealt with some issues with some parents that have passed over. And say, for instance, give an example which has happened, the mother was not nice to the daughter. And even from that side, the mother is trying to reconcile with her daughter that she's sorry. And I always say to them, I'm not here to alter your emotional state of body or your mind. but your mum wants to say sorry because she took it too far. So it feels to me that they on the other side do understand that there are some things that they could have done better,
Right, right.
and they kind of like trying to emphasize that point to the person that's having the reading. So there are a number of facets that do occur. And some people don't want to talk to them down here. Like, I don't want to talk to dad. It's like, okay, that's fine. I respect that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that experience as well. It's interesting because I have a son and a daughter on the other side,
Yes.
and when I connect with them, I definitely am connecting with a mature spirit, and they passed as children. And so I 100% have experienced exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, so it's all just, uh, truly, truly fascinating. Is there anything else, Philip, that you would like to share with us that maybe we haven't touched on?
Yes, I think that each and every one of us are unique instruments to the unfolding of our own reality. Remember your own importance, remember your own sovereignty. And even though some people go through a hell of a life, belief and a will or the desire to move forward can change a lot because the universe is in you. The Godhead is within you. Everything is within you. It's just that we operate by a system that's tried to, in some ways, disable us from that or to sway us from our journey. It doesn't matter. It matters not. We're eternal, we're immortal. We'll all go back to the other side. And I just think it's important for you to know that you are never alone. You are never alone. I even see the lights, not on peripheral vision, but directly. I don't know what they are. People tell me what they are, but they are amazing. They come in really bright lights like silvers, yellows, golds. It's incredible. And I'm like, that is incredible because that's another energy coming from what we call the other side. And, incredible. So I'll just say to you that they are here. They're always here, even though we're separated by space and time, and that you, as the instrument, are so important to this evolving life that you're living and you're experiencing and unfolding. And they share with us in our pain, our emotional pain, physical pain, as well as our joy and our liberation. But we will ultimately be liberated, each and every one of us, totally.
Beautiful. This is a question I like to ask all my guests, and do you have or what are your spiritual practices that help you to stay connected? Things that you do maybe on a daily or a weekly basis?
Well, what I do is that I literally sometimes just talk to them. I always connect myself to my spirit guide, Wolf Song, to Jesus Christ of Nazareth, to Lady Mary Magdalene. I call her Lady, I don't know why, and to Pista Sophia and Thoth, the scribe, the Egyptian scribe, and then to the monad, to the pure total spirit. And I always send them out saying, please help me, please give me truth, please guide me as your humble servant. And I am always humbled. I see myself, and it sounds crazy, right? But I like bow to them like I'm submitting myself to them, humbly to them as their servant. I love that. And just to finish off here, the famous author, Professor Clyde Staple Lewis, C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Narnia Chronicles and the Screwtape Letters, he said, after someone asked him a question, it's a beautiful. He said, "Would you rather be the magician or would you rather be the boy?" And he said he'd rather be the boy caught in the magician's spell because the magician knows all the tricks. The boy is caught in the wonderment of the experience. And I like that because
Uh,
it's like when you look at it that way, it's like, wow, that says everything, you know?
yeah, that's fabulous, really fabulous. How can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
On the website, on search engines, or www.thekinsellatwins.com or www.philipkinsella.com. So there's one that I share with my twin brother, the Kinsella twins. You can check it out. All our art and our books and our children's creations as well. To one of them that we're trying to re get back out there on a large level, Magnus and Microma. And so yeah, that's how they can get hold of me.
Great, and we'll have the links in the show notes as well, so thank you so much for being here today. This has been delightful. I've really enjoyed this.
Well, Julie, it's been an honor to have been on your show. And very beautiful soul that you are as well too. And never lose hope, never lose sight, even though sometimes our journey is difficult and the path has been difficult. When we lose people, we just got to try and keep things together and hold things together. You're doing an amazing job as an instrument for the divine.
Thank you. You as well.
God bless. Thank you.